Stella by Starlight, Chapter 10, Treasures in a Cigar Box. I must give this paper an F, Stella, Mrs. Grayson told Stella sadly at the end of the day, catching her as she was walking out the schoolhouse door. It's incomplete. It's got potential, but you gave up. Perhaps I should stop by your house with a plate of ginger snaps and have a chat with your mama. Oh, please don't do that, Stella begged in alarm. I'll finish it tonight and bring it in tomorrow, I promise. I know the writing part can be a challenge for you, Stella, Mrs. Grayson said. You read well, you think well. All you need to do is make the leap to putting it down on paper. And actually, the little that you wrote here is pretty good, but, she added sternly, you can do better. Wishing a hole big enough to swallow her would appear in the floor, Stella couldn't look at the teacher. Yes, ma'am, she mumbled. Try this, Stella. Mrs. Grayson pulled her pocketbook from the bottom desk drawer. Write about yourself. You are the expert on you. I shall expect a finished paper in the morning, or I may be joining y'all for supper tomorrow. Understood? Now get on home before your mama starts to wondering why JoJo got there first. Stella nodded, thanked the teacher, then hurried down the road. And thankfully, her mother was busy with the vegetable garden, so she didn't notice Stella slipping in a little later than usual. Stella raced through her chores, making sure the carrots were sliced perfectly, the potatoes peeled thinly, and the table cleaned and shined for dinner. She felt jumpy, anxious for the night, hopeful that no fiery disturbances would mar the darkness this time, and worried that her mother would find out she'd gotten in trouble at school. Hours later, after dinner, after JoJo's good-night book, Stella was still worried. It was taking everyone far too long to fall asleep. Stella waited and waited. The blaze in the fireplace had died down to embers, only whispers and ashen shadows remaining of the roaring fire of a few hours ago. JoJo lay on his cot close to the hearth, with Dusty curled beside him. At last, Father started snoring loudly, with gasps and grunts between. When Stella teased him about it each morning, however, he'd swear that he'd never made a noise. And finally, slowly, ever so slowly, Stella tiptoed across the floor, carefully avoiding the floorboard that she knew would creak. Nobody stirred. The dog raised his head briefly, but went back to sleep. Stella grabbed Papa's work jacket from the nail by the door. The door itself did not squeak when she opened it. She'd thought ahead. After dinner, she had oiled the hinge with a dab of lard. Now she smiled as she pressed the door shut and inhaled with the crispness of the night air. But still wary, she stood still. She listened. Silence. She waited. Nothing. The night sky was an inky blue-black blanket, strewn with thousands of crystal-bright stars. A half-moon added even more light. When she was satisfied that all was well, she sat on the second step and reached under the third, searching deeper and deeper until her fingers found what she was searching for. She pulled out the school notebook that she'd stuffed under there after school, as well as a package wrapped in a piece of worn leather. Inhaling the rich animal smell of it, she unwrapped it slowly. There lay Stella's treasure, an old cigar box. She lifted the lid, the scent of tobacco wafting out, and sifted through the items inside. Dozens of yellowing and curled newspaper articles she'd torn from Papa's discarded newspapers. From news stories not pasted on the wall. She'd started collecting them after a school assignment last year. There was one about a lady named Amelia Earhart. She flies all by herself in a small plane across the ocean. Another one about two men named Laurel and Hardy, who are famous for being a funny comedy team. And more. Amos and Andy are famous for being funny also, but they are played by white men who pretend to be Negro. The colored newspapers explain this part. A man named Hitler from Germany has lots of soldiers following him. He calls them stormtroopers. Someone kidnaps the baby of a man named Charles Lindbergh. The baby dies. Lots of people have no jobs because of something called the Depression. A man named Roosevelt promises to fix that if he is elected president. Stella also collected local stories. Miss Irma Thorndike wins first place in the Miss Corncob contest. Clifford Eubanks gets arrested for being drunk on a Sunday. Donna Lee Dixon grows the biggest pumpkin in the county. It weighs 33 pounds, 7 ounces. The world, she has found, was so much bigger than Bumblebee, and so much more exciting. Stella set the clippings aside and began flipping through a couple of pages of the notebook from school, frowning. She just couldn't seem to get it right, this writing thing. She did most of her homework with JoJo at the kitchen table, but she practiced her writing at night. She didn't want her family to know how she messed up. Mama and Papa, of course, expected her to bring home good grades in every subject. Ugh. Finally, Stella opened the notebook to a fresh page. Taking an idea from her father's newspaper that morning, she wrote just one word on that page: truth. The whole rest of the page was an ocean of white. Double ugh. She chewed on the pencil. She made curlicues on each letter of truth. Then she made a decision. If she was going to really write with honesty, she ought to start, like Mrs. Grayson said, with herself. She gripped the pencil so tight it made a mark on her middle finger. It took 5 tries to get it right. 5 balled-up sheets of paper. 5 pages of anger and mess-ups and erasures. When she finished, she rubbed her eyes, sleep begging to creep in. She read it over one last time, not really satisfied, but it was the truth, even if it still had some scratch-outs. Chapter 11, Truth. My name is Stella and I am me. Scratched out. My name is Estelle and I am somebody. Scratched out. My name is Estelle Mills and I'm not nobody. Mrs. Grayson would say that's a double, marked out, double negative. Well, I'm here to say I'm not no negative. I am me, and that's a fact. I like to be called Stella because it reminds me of stars, and I like the night. Mama tells me I was born at midnight, marked out, midnight, during a full moon. Maybe that is why. I'm left-handed, the only student in the whole school who is. My family reminds me of good things to drink. Mama is hot chocolate. Papa is black coffee. JoJo is sweet tea. Me, I'm the color of rum. Mama cooks with it sometimes. I've got thick black hair and bushy caterpillar-looking eyebrows. When I look in the mirror, I don't see pretty. I just see me. Besides, sometimes things that look pretty, like secret fire in the darkness, are really pretty ugly.